Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Quad Para Association of South Africa's Disability Rights and Advocacy webinar. And this day is on a significant occasion as it is International Day for Persons with Disabilities. So I am Chadley, the project coordinator of Quasar, and it is a pleasure to be with you today. Quasar is the leading agency for quadriplegics and paraplegics in South Africa, and therefore today is more than a date on a calendar. It's a global call to action. It reminds us that disability rights are human rights and that inclusion is not optional, it is essential. This webinar is an opportunity to amplify our voices, share knowledge, and challenge barriers that still exist in our society today. Our goal today is clear. Quasar wants to inspire meaningful change, strengthen awareness, and empower every person with a disability to live with dignity, equality, and opportunity. Together, we can shape a country where accessibility and inclusion are not just aspirations, but it is a reality. As such, Quasar is honored to have exceptional speakers who embody advocacy and leadership in this space. Their insights will guide us toward practical solutions and renewed commitment to disability rights and advocacy. Thank you for joining us today, speakers and attendees. Your presence here is a part of the movement towards progress. I would like to give a brief bio of our speakers. Our first speaker will be Mr. Raven Benny. Raven is a Quasar community partner with a wealth of knowledge on disability rights. He assists Quasar with disability sensitization training for corporates, as well as assistive staff training at airports, and he is actively busy as an outreach supporter as well. Today, he will be sharing his expertise on disability rights. Our second speaker will be Aaron Mupeti. Aaron is a qualified advocate with extensive knowledge into the legalities of disability rights, but also a lot of real world experience. And he will address the challenges that face persons with disabilities. And today he will give a first-hand account on his lived experience. Last but not least, will be Ari Serlis, and I'm sure all of us know Ari. If I must list all his accolades, it will probably take us the full session. But nonetheless, Ari has been a disability activist for decades, servicing many organizations, sitting on numerous committees, and spearheading many protests and demonstrations towards equality. Today, he shares his years of experience in the advocacy space. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome our first speaker, Raven Benny, to share his presentation with us. Thank you. Okay, I think there might be a technical issue on your side, Raven. Aaron, are you available to present your experience in terms of your lived experience as a person with a disability and the challenges and how you overcame them, perhaps as well, through your presentation?
Yes, I am. So basically, I'm a quadriplegic, and I'm just going to share my journey of resilience, adaptation, and leadership. As I may put it. Next slide, please. So I was not born a quadriplegic, but through a car accident, unfortunately, my neck got broken, and I became a C5, C6 quadriplegic. I come from a very humble family. And as you shall see from my presentation, how that came to become a major challenge as I went on through this journey of being a quadriplegic. So, being a quadriplegic basically means I'm paralyzed from basically uh, the neck downwards. I cannot use my limbs as someone who's not injured can, and I face a lot of challenges. So when I got injured, my life changed instantly. I had to adapt, improvise, and learn on how to do the most simplest of tasks. Next slide. So the challenges I faced after injury was I all of a sudden realized that accessibility was now more of a challenge. I would need ramps. I couldn't access other amenities, be it the toilet, the kitchen, and so on. So I had to adapt, and where I could, try to improvise by putting makeshift ramps and so on. But since I was from a humble family, it was a very expensive exercise. So I had to, I ended up experiencing both physical and emotional adjustment that I had to make. And back then I was a student, so the financial hardships also started creeping in. I had to finish my degree at home, and it was actually a first for the university that I was at the time. However, through constructive engagement, I completed my first degree, and through family and friends' support, I slowly managed to navigate into this new world and life that I'd now been that I'd entered into, so to speak. So some of the barriers that I've experienced, uh, the issue of accessibility is still a major challenge. As you know, our our infrastructure is such that it doesn't sufficiently address the issue of accessibility for people with disabilities, be it the sectional title scheme that I live in, public public buildings and roads. It's still a challenge. I also experienced financial challenges, and with most people with disabilities, they do experience such, and um, it's still a challenge. So I had to adapt gradually. Um, for instance, I ended up doing other courses through distance learning via UNISA, and whenever they would come to do their block release programs, Kwasa would always accommodate me in one of their independent living centers. And that was of great hope. I also had to use assistive devices and such as computers. So my support come from Kwasa. Received an internship opportunity through basically them sharing with me information. I also ended up living in one of the independent living centers with the help of Kwasa, and slowly I grew into my profession, where I eventually became an attorney, and I'm now actually living alone and married and moved away from an independent living center. Next slide, please. So adjusting to the workplace was a major challenge because at first I didn't have transport to get to work. So eventually I learned how to drive through the use of hand controls, and I had to advocate for reasonable accommodation because the obstruction facilities were not suitable for someone like me. And um, eventually, the company did adapt, but it took some time. And yeah, and now I am my own legal practice. Can we have the next slide, please? You know, as a person with a disability, you also need support. And uh, when I got married, my wife has proven to be a pillar of strength. Yeah, so at present, I'm happily married and I've got a spousal support, and it has proved to be um, a relief. And it just shows that if you're disabled, it doesn't necessarily mean you cannot live a normal life. Next slide. So today I run my own legal practice, Mupeti Attorneys. I'm also a board member of QASA. Both regionally and.
Hi, Aaron. Sorry, can't hear you. Okay. Yeah, I think Aaron is experiencing terrible network issues there. But thank you. We heard your life journey and your experience, Aaron. And in the panel discussion, we can also tap into that a bit further on your expertise as well. In that, thank you for sharing the challenges that you faced and also the support you received from QASA. But we must hold government also accountable for the accessibility issues that you have mentioned as well. But it's good that you mentioned how QASA had impacted your life through the support that we could offer you. Thanks, Aaron. Raven, if you are ready, the floor is yours. You will be speaking about a core concept here of this webinar, which is disability rights in South Africa, which I know you always mention to me when we chat. Disability rights is human rights. Thanks, Raven.
Thank you very much, Chadley, and to the audience that we have, and as I mentioned earlier on, the staff and management members of QuadPara Association that might be listening or will have access to the feed of today. Thank you very much for the privilege that I have to be able to, on this auspicious day, to share my thoughts and my ideas on what I experience as disability rights, and on this day. But I just want to share quickly where we came from, our past, I mean, where our disability rights come from, where we currently are, and where we want to be. What would be the ideal place when it comes to disability rights in South Africa? This introduction, I heard how he so eloquently explained the purpose of the day, and also, but we all know by now, or most of us know by now, that the 3rd of December is the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And here in South Africa, we also celebrate it as a National Disability Rights Awareness Day. In 1981, it was established by the United Nations that this day would be the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And I like to say of because there's a difference between of and for disabilities. We can discuss that on a different day. But way back in 1981, and the need or the purpose for the day was to raise awareness and also to increase the understanding of disability issues, and also improve on the commitment to ensure that the dignity and rights and also the well-being of persons with disabilities And then we took it down, not down, but we joined in the celebrations where we had that our cabinet in 2013 declared the whole period from the 3rd of November until today, the 3rd of December, every year, that is Disability Rights Awareness Month. And it's a wonderful feature to have. It's a wonderful reminder to have. It's good to see that everyone is encouraged to be aware and to raise awareness of persons with disabilities. But for the persons with disabilities, it's not just that special day or that special month. It is every single day of our lives that we have to manage ourselves and our condition, and also we still face a little bit of prejudice here and there and some unhealthy interaction with some of the communities out there. But we're very happy for this day that we have and this time that we have to can focus in and zoom into disability rights awareness. Can we go to the next slide, please? The theme for this year, and it's touching because I had the opportunity to last year also have a platform and an outing or an outage where I have an opportunity for me to raise my opinions, and it was sad to see that the theme was a little bit longer last year than what it is now, but for now it's focused. The theme is focused on creating strategic multi-sectoral partnerships for a disability inclusive society. Many of the words have been seen or heard throughout the other years that we celebrated this day, but we're very grateful for the government that has, or our government department that has chosen that theme for today. And it's also to focus on removing some of the barriers that we face. We heard in Aaron's presentation some of the barriers that he faced, and especially some of them is in everyday issues that everyone faces, whether you have a disability or not: education, employment, healthcare, technology, social participation. Those are all things that all rights that's guaranteed in our constitution. We have some of the best legislation in the world, but yet we still have a struggle as people with disabilities in some of the aspects or the spheres of society. Can we move to the next slide, please? We've been coming a very long way, if I say, when it comes to disability rights in South Africa. I have just highlighted a few on there. It's not even complete. You'll see there's another slide on it. It's not even complete. But what I want to pick up or highlight on there is that it was in 1992 that DPSA has launched the Disability Rights Charter of South Africa. And we can see some of it also. The white paper or the INDS was in 1997. I won't say the flavor of the year, but we can see how far we have come as a nation and as a country with incorporating or developing legislation and incorporating international treaties and conventions into our domestic legislation that we have. And also like the Employment Equity Act, which has been in 1998, that has been promulgated, and we saw that the target of 2% for employment of persons with disabilities was set back then. And we know also that after all these years, we are still struggling as a country to reach that target. But we're not here to speak about that. We speak about all the other rights that we have. And in 2007, I think that was one of the great moves of our country, or as a nation, to ratify the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And that gave us not only the backbone or led us into our own piece of domestic legislation that we have, that is known as the White Paper on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We can go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. As I said, that's just a few highlights of some of the achievements that we have when it comes to legislation and disability rights. We know that we have the obligation to report regularly on the status of our rights in the country, and we also have in 2015, as I mentioned, where the cabinet approved a white paper on the rights of persons with disabilities. The next slide, please. So what do we do? What do we do with all those rights? We have, as I said now, one of the best constitutions in the world. We have We have ratified the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I mentioned all these things that we have there. And what I need to mention on there is that we celebrated 70 years of the Freedom Charter in 2025. But we know that the Disability Rights Charter is based on some of the principles that is contained in that significant document. Whereas a white paper on the rights of persons with disabilities is based on the principles and the contents of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We also moved on because there's not one single description or definition of disabilities. I like to spread it out and say each different government department has its own definition when it comes to disability. But we know also that disability is an evolving concept and it's still busy evolving. It has evolved from what we used to know or what we saw as a medical model where we were seen as object of pity, where we needed to be fixed, but we have moved on and now we have adopted and adapted to having the rights base of disability, which I feel is applicable and also right in line with what we are having in discussion today, the rights of persons with disabilities. Next slide, please. So we have the white paper, as I mentioned now, but the white paper in itself is not enforceable. We cannot use one of the principles or one of the pieces of legislation in there and be able to make sure that someone has to pay or someone has to make up or someone has to do good where your rights have been frowned upon. But it is not enforceable. The white paper in itself is not enforceable. We have another piece of legislation that I alluded to in my highlights, which is the PAPUDA Act, which is a Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act. And that is what we can use currently. That is one of the pieces of legislation that we have that can be used in conjunction with other state entities such as the Human Rights Commission, which we also have to our disposal, because the Human Rights Commission also have what is called an international monitoring mechanism. That is a special entity on its own that has to make sure that all our rights and we comply with some of these pieces of international legislation that we prescribe to. Can we move one slide? For me, this is one of the important aspects that I find in the white paper on the rights of persons with disabilities. We as people with disabilities, we need to understand our rights. We need to understand our place also when it comes into the legislation. We have what is depicted in the white paper as duty bearers, which we know, we can see on the screen also. Who are the duty bearers when it comes to the rights? We know those are the overarching bodies or the government departments, state institutions, as you can see there, even persons, even the representatives of organizations of persons with disabilities, including the persons with disabilities themselves that are representatives on their bodies. But who are the beneficiaries or who are the rights holders? It is people with disabilities and their families. So if you are an active or an activist or you are driven with activism, then you need to understand your place also, and that as a person with a disability, you are both a duty bearer and you also a rights holder when it comes to the white paper on the rights of persons with disabilities. But let me just take it to the next slide. So when we have, as I explained, we have the best legislation. We've got the constitution, we've got it all in place. The only thing that is missing is the implementation. Recently, our government, our new government of national unity, has agreed upon the way forward. They actually came up to the next 5 years, and they've developed this medium-term development plan. And in there's lots of opportunities for the different departments to mainstream disability, because we do not have an out-and-out disability act currently. We have these pieces of legislation that I alluded to and that guides us. But we should use the opportunity that we have. We should use the tools to our disposal. Yes, we do have, personally, I'd say, an improvement in our government that we have if you look back to the past. Way back from the past, we have the opportunity now to make sure that our voices are heard, even though it doesn't always fall on the correct ears. We have that responsibility to, as both rights holders and rights bearers, to be vocal when it comes to our rights. And we also, as a group, as a collective, we need to support the call for a Disability Act with a loud voice, because we know that there will be benefits. There will be benefits for us when we have an out-and-out Disability Act or a standalone disability ministry, but we'll get to that. So I'm moving on to the next slide. So, as I mentioned, now with all the legislation that we have in place and all the...
Sorry, Raven, to interject. Just a notice, you've got 3 minutes left for your presentation.
100%, I'm wrapping up. So what do we do with that? We have to ensure that we include everyone. If I say everyone, I mentioned now that it's not only people with disabilities that face the hardship of unemployment, poor healthcare, and in our country, but we also know that as a group, as a collective, as people with disabilities that's celebrating this day today, we also have our responsibilities. We also should not leave anyone behind, because we know there are underrepresented groups within our organizations and in our sector, but we need to make sure that built on all these legislation that we have, built on all the plans that's in place from government and private sector, we may make sure that we pay particular attention to some of the underrepresented groups, such as persons with short stature, such as persons with dyslexia. This list gets longer and longer as we go on, because disability is an evolving concept, as I mentioned. And whether you live in a rural area or in an urban area, you still have some of the same needs, but it's just a little bit more difficult to have those needs met. So we will not leave anyone behind. We must make sure that all the represented groups are also included, and make sure that we understand our rights as people with disabilities. We do have it in place. We have the rights. Know your rights. QASA, Quad Para Association, we publish a manual called Know Your Rights. So, and also then through interventions such as the one we have today, we have the opportunity to learn a little bit more and understand our rights so that we can know our place in society. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you for listening. And I look forward to the rest of the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Raven, for your wonderful presentation, giving us a clear outline of South Africa's achievements within the disability rights space. However, you also touched on implementing those rights from a government perspective and policy makers and holders perspective. There's still a lack in that, and that's where we come in to advocate for our rights, so that we can get equal opportunities and deserved opportunities just like everybody else. And thank you for stating that the person with disabilities are also not just a duty bearer, but also a beneficiary, tying into both aspects and spaces and having influence on both is vital for an inclusive society. Thank you, Raven. And last but not least, I want to invite Ari to share his presentation around disability advocacy.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, everybody. Chadi, can you confirm that I'm loud and clear?
You are loud and clear, Ari.
Okay, thank you very much. So I don't want to run the clock down. I think it's important for us to engage with questions and allow everybody some stage time to share with us any issues that we feel we can respond with good advocacy and lobby advice. And so I'm going to have a two-part presentation. I'm going to talk about what advocacy means and what lobby means, so that we understand the difference between the two, And we need to be advocates ourselves for our rights. That's really, really important. I can't emphasize that enough. And in the second part, I'd like to highlight just some of the things that CWASA have done over the years in terms of advocacy and lobby, and share some of the successes we've had in time from CWASA, so members can appreciate how well CWASA has done, and still lots more to do. So really in the disability sector, advocacy means supporting and standing up for the rights, needs, choices of people with disabilities. It's about making sure that we are treated fairly. So to make sure that we are treated fairly, included in the community, and have access to services and opportunities that we need. You know, we must speak up for our rights. Advocacy helps people with disabilities understand and claim our legal and human rights. You know, for example, the right to accessible housing, accessible transport, good health care, inclusive education, and equal treatment. You know, that's just to name a few. We must be heard. Sometimes a person may need support to express their views or our views and wishes or make decisions. Advocacy ensures that our voice is front and center, not replaced by what other people think is best for us. We must be front and center. It's really important. In terms of challenging unfair treatment, advocates' work is to stop discrimination, neglect, or unsafe practices. So when I say the word advocates, if we feel we're still in the trenches, we are the advocates. It's not them or someone else that needs to voice our problem. If we don't voice it, nobody will know what it is, and it'll never be solved. Supporting access to services, advocacy can help someone get the services, funding, or equipment that we need, like healthcare or community participation opportunities. So I'm trying to emphasize that advocacy actually belongs to us. The space of advocacy doesn't belong to anyone else. So if we aren't behaving like advocates for our rights, then you really need to put your hand down and not say anything. You know, the complaint box is closed if we aren't the complainants. And systematic advocacy focuses on changing policies and systems to make them fairer to all, especially people with disabilities. And we get different types of advocacy. We get self-advocacy, individual advocacy, legal advocacy, systemic advocacy, and peer advocacy. And, you know, time doesn't allow me to explain the difference between all of those. But if you just Google the word types of advocacy, you'll see, and ask yourself the question, where am I most effective? Where do I fit into this? If I'm experiencing what I believe is unfair human rights, lack of opportunities, or I'm still feeling that I'm in the trench, then your best step up is to look at the different types of advocacy and ask yourself, where do I fit in here? The word advocacy is a broad term, and it includes any activity where a person or organization supports, promotes, or defends a cause or idea. It is a different definition to the word lobby. And that can include raising public awareness, educating communities or officials about an issue, organizing campaigns or events, sharing stories or research to influence thinking. I think it's so important for us to share the advocacy issues that we have. So we start seeing who's in that common space, and then CWASA can develop a class action if necessary. And that is far more effective than individuals doing things like posting on social media, etc. Advocacy does not necessarily try to influence a specific law or vote. I think that's important. That's what lobby does. It could be a non-profit organization, let's say like CWASA, developing a campaign to educate the public about climate change or road safety, as we do. And so when you come to lobby, to understand the definition of lobby and the difference between lobby and advocacy, lobbying is a specific type of advocacy that focuses on influencing government decisions, especially legislation. And for me, that's best done by organizations, let's say like Kwasa. In fact, I don't know any other disability organization that has done as much lobbying and has success as what Kwasa has over the years. We're undoubtedly the leaders, but we have waned for a while. And now we need to gather what those issues are, and we need to deliver them to Kwasa's door and support Kwasa in lobbying again. We had a lot of civil courage a few years ago. And I say, let's get that back on our agenda again if we think that things are slow to produce further rights for ourselves or they don't exist. So in terms of lobbying, we can persuade lawmakers to vote for or against a specific bill. When you lobby politicians, lobbying changes regulations. Obviously, when we do lobbying, the definition of lobbying, we must follow the legal rules, such as registering, if we're going to go to the streets, official passageways of reporting stuff. It's not only singing songs in the street and thinking things will change just by singing songs in the street. It is a different role to advocacy. So broadly, advocacy is supporting a cause, and lobbying is trying to influence specific laws or government actions. So let's look at the things that I think Kwasa and people with mobility impairments, physical disabilities, that really affect us right from the beginning, however young you are or however old you are. So let's start with young. Mainstream education is a must. There's no ways that people are going to recognize the value proposition of people with disabilities if we don't school together. Those first 12 years, or those first 12 grades, when everyone's playing, I'm not saying that do away with special classrooms and teachers that understand how to teach people with different disabilities or various disabilities. I'm saying we must be on the same campus. So after 12 years, 12 grades together, you can start putting a sunset clause on the Employment Equity Act, because my buddy might be, or my group of buddies might be 5 able-bodied people. Yet I'll never get a chance to be with those buddies if I'm in a special school. My buddies will all be persons with disabilities, so we're not mainstreamed at all. I'm a big proponent of mainstream education. Then we'll know each other's value proposition. And people that are not people with disabilities will see the resilience, will see the bravery, will see the aspirations of persons with disabilities far sooner than later, when we run to companies with our CVs trying to impose the Employment Equity Act upon them. Getting skills is a big issue with persons with disabilities. We jammed into learnerships. We jammed into internships. Yes, they pay a stipend, but in the long term, they don't give us a career. And careers are critical for us to be able to not only earn an income, but we must earn a living. There's big difference between income, a salary, and earning a living. A living has a huge scope to it. Transport's a big issue, and we must constantly be dealing with that until every bus, every train, every ship, every long-haul bus is accessible. Not one must be inaccessible. That's my view on it. I'm hardcore on this. We want good health care. Universal access, well, that speaks to a lot of this already. If all schools were accessible, if all transport was accessible. Universal access frees us. Then people talk about we being confined by our wheelchairs and bound by our wheelchairs. Absolute nonsense. Our wheelchairs give us mobility. We are confined by building infrastructure, but more importantly and firstly, inaccessible transport. Dollar ride's not a sustainable service. It does help at the moment, but it's not sustainable. And it's been proven in Durban and in Cape Town. So we want UA, universal design. We want architects to understand what it means We want universal design first, aesthetic second, coming off their drawing boards. And then, of course, we want employment opportunities and self-employment, entrepreneurial opportunities. We want access to justice, and we want good justice. We want dignity and understanding. Okay, so what do we do if we have an issue in any of those? I would say first, okay, if you're a member of CWASA, if you're a person with a mobility impairment or a wheelchair user, you've got to become a member of CWASA. We are right behind you all the way. And critical mass is very good for when we represent our constituency. We need critical mass. If you're saying, oh, 20 people have this problem, we want to say 2,000 people have this problem for people to take us seriously. You need to take names, places, times, photos, videos, notes, if you feel you've been transgressed, whatever environment it is in. Don't be complicit by letting it go. Don't be complicit. You want to be plicit. Complicit means you just let the problem go and you say, oh, no, I won't argue the toss now. Contact CWASA first, then give CWASA a chance. CWASA is very good at dealing with advocacy and lobby. Then you go to social media. Social media is just like carte blanche. You'll see it on a Sunday. People get embarrassed. A few people, the perpetrators are embarrassed on Sunday. Monday, they've forgotten. They've read the headlines of the Monday newspapers. We don't achieve anything by social media. We achieve very little. We just moan and groan, and people see us as moaners and groaners. Let's work underground and come up much stronger than just each of us posting on social media, whatever forum it is. CWASA first. Let's see if CWASA can solve that problem. And then, if we have a result, please, everybody, please, 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 let's acknowledge it. Let's say to the perpetrator, you made a mistake. You didn't acknowledge us. You heard us, and we've solved it. We need to say thank you as much as possible for those few victories that we get. We don't get a lot of victories, but when we do, we must be noble and say thank you. I'm going to share slides now quickly and just take you through a little journey, which I'm sure a lot of you will enjoy. So interesting. Let me tell you about this cartoon. You see at the bottom, R.J. Crisp. That was a quadriplegic who's a great cartoonist. And guys, cartoonists are advocates. Those are careers. Cartoonists write about issues. They call people out in their own way. This was a cartoon made for CWASA and by CWASA. Look at all these interesting problems. This is actually when the disability grant was 870 Rand. But there's CWASA in the streets with this cartoon, and we popularized this cartoon. And then look at these able-bodied persons there. It's them again. I thought we gave them the legislation. What's the problem? Yes, as Raven said, we've got great legislation. Some of the best in the world. Not quite yet the best, because we need a Disability Act. And just to let you know, I believe by this time next year we'll have it. There's been a lot of work done. I have been involved quite a bit in that. We've scoped out a lot of the material that needs to be in an act, and that came out of the white paper on the rights of persons with disabilities. So that's an interesting cartoon. Just to mention, I don't want to reiterate Raven's presentation, but the white paper on the rights of persons with disabilities at the moment, it's our strongest, weakest piece of guideline. It's not an act, we can't sue against it, but it does flash out what the requirements would be to domesticate this white paper into pieces of regulation and legislation. So the Disability Act will gather its purpose around the 9 pillars. And the pillar that affects us the most is pillar 1, which is removing barriers to access and participation. So you want to go and look up pillar 1 and get some of those points of reference into your vocabulary, so that at least you can sound clever. If you're arguing with someone, you tell them pillar 1 of the white paper, point 3 says this or that, and then it'll be a little bit intimidating to some people. But let's say know your rights. That's really, really important. The point is quoting the Constitution, and everybody does that, is scraping the bottom of the barrel. Quote Pillar 1 of the White Paper on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Okay, let's just talk about, this isn't the elephant in the room, although most people that have the privilege of driving think this is the elephant in the room. Guys, the abuse of wheelchair parking is but a minute issue with us wheelchair users. Very few of us have the privilege of owning a car, driving a car, and going to fancy places that have got wheelchair parking. A lot of our members come from rural areas, and let me tell you, the abuse of wheelchair parking is not even on the agenda. But those of us, the few of us that have the privilege, wheelchair parking, I would like to pose this to you. Over my years, I did various things from illegitimate, illegal things to cars and persons, venting the phases of anger I went through from my youth to now my maturity. Here's the thing. Wheelchair parking bays should be 3.5 meters wide, 3,500 millimeters wide. If they're not, that's the problem with the developer of the facility, the shopping center, whatever. It doesn't matter whether the bay is abused. You can't use it anyway. So what the hell, you might as well park far, far away. But if it is 3.5 meters wide, the reason why the bay is abused is because of its location, not because the person wants a wide bay. It's because it's close to the entrance and they're bloody lazy, or they've got a limp or a pacemaker or a hip replacement or any other pathetic excuse, whether they're frail or very old or limp or they're bloody oxygen thieves, Finiston Clark. Most of those people with limps and replacements, they should be walking further. They shouldn't be walking. They should be parking far away and get their exercise. They abuse our bays. Quite often, if there's only 2 bays there, 1 car parks in, it's 50% of our bays gone. Please, if you do have the chance to engage with them, politely just say, can I explain? Allow me to explain the purpose of the bay. It's 3.5 meters wide, so I can enter or exit from either side. So 1 person at a time. So they're expecting to get, let's use the word, cucked on or whatever, or bad attitude. Be polite and say, please just understand why we need this bay. And you'll find we'll convert 1 person at a time. There is another way, and we would suggest Kwaza's got this wonderful project where, and Kwaza, you just ask Kwaza, they can send you some of these stickers. And Kwaza's also got stickers that you can put in front on people's windows, in front of their eyesight, on the outside. They're very difficult to get off as well, to saying you're abusing the parking. But this is a first start. Take a photo. Make sure you've got the wheelchair parking sign, the car in the wheelchair parking bay, and we can see the registration, and send and WhatsApp it to this number. You can get these details from Kwaza, and let's start building. Let's start seeing if there's some serial abusers. I'll tell you what, in my time at Kwaza, we had some serial whistleblowers. It was wonderful. There would be people that had nothing to do all day. They just get up and they just start putting stickers in people's cars and taking photographs. That was their voluntary career. It was quite interesting. And Kwaza does follow up. Generally what Kwaza does is they will find the abuse taking place at one particular shopping center. It's the abuse is prevalent. And then they ask the shopping center to reconsider their policy and to use clamping or to chain it up or to watch the car guards for not taking money for allowing people to park there. So various different reasons why they're abused. And so, nice cartoon by Robert Crisp again. We've got no transport. We need to lobby for transport all the time. And we've got Kwaza's got a nice campaign called the Ish campaign. And so indirectly, all these things you see is Kwaza's lobby and advocacy campaigns. There was the front page of this latest Rolling Inspiration with Kwaza's Vice Chairperson Anthony on a loudspeaker. I still feel that wasn't effective enough. Just shouting at politicians, you've got to make politicians, you've got to intimidate them properly. You've got to disrupt a little bit to really get the change. But anyway, this is a start. Interesting enough, this is the first rally or demonstration by the disability sector in 1994. Isn't that interesting? That was many, many years ago. And that was actually the first time I went to the streets and did some, let's call it lobby work. And we were a bit disrupted. In fact, all of us here in this picture were arrested, but they didn't know what to do with us. They couldn't put us in police vans, so they let us go. And that was decades ago. Here was another campaign. We're going to go into the street, and that was in Bloemfontein at an architects seminar. This was when they launched the e-tolls. We burnt a wheelchair. There was a condemned wheelchair, just to let you know. And eventually, Kwasa and Outer actually stopped the e-tolls. We achieved a lot. We intimidated. There was a front page photograph in the Star with this. We went to the Institute of Architects in KZN and the World's Conference in Durban for architects, and we made sure that they signed a memorandum to ensure that universal access was on the agenda, and these some clippings from it. We burnt a ladder because we believe that architects are giving us ladders, not giving us ramps, and that was very effective. We boycotted and went on a big march and a demonstration to make sure that all the 10 stadia at the 2010 World Cup were accessible. And Danny Jordan cucked in his pants that day, and he didn't know what to do with himself, but we made the necessary changes. We ensured that the Road Accident Fund amendment bills didn't go through. Kwasa achieved that, very, very effective. We brought in a law that was Minister Martinez van Schalkwyk that allowed us to drive our 4x4 vehicles on the beach with the Department of Environmental Affairs. So that was a big achievement. We made Kwasa, together with the Chris Burger Pitcher Jackson Players Fund, we ensured that they brought in new laws of safety in rugby, and that SARU took responsibility for safety in rugby. We engaged with people like Christopher Reeve to make sure that globally our advocacy work was effective. And, sorry, that one wasn't meant to be there. We have a road safety campaign, Buckle Up, We Don't Want New Members. Constantly telling people to use their seatbelts. That is very, very effective advocacy. So that's me, but I thought it was important to understand the difference between advocacy and lobby, and then highlight how effective Kwasa was and has been in the past. We changed many laws. We were heard by many people. We were intimidating, which was really important. Ons het nie kak gevat nie. Hulle het nie geweet wat ons weet nie. So apologies for the odd, unusual word. Apologies for the one slide. And I hope that I've been heard today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ari, for your detailed presentation on the difference between advocacy and lobbying, and the work that you've put in as a former CEO of Kwasa as well, in your advocacy efforts and in your influence on policy making and law changes. But the keyword is but. We need to do more. We need to advocate more, and we encourage our members of Kwasa to reach out to us with where your rights are being impeded against, so that we can take it through the right channels and ensure that we address these barriers and challenges as well. So that's enough from me as well. I would like to open the opportunity for anyone on the floor. If you have any questions for our panelists, please. It's your time. You can share your question with our panelist. Okay, while you're thinking, I've got a question. Okay. I see Masentle Mofokeng. I see your hand raised there.
Okay. My name is Masintle Mfukeng. The other name is Pauline Mfukeng. I'm a member of Quad Para Association. I'm a quadriplegic. I've been a quadriplegic for the past 37 years. It means I'm a legend. Being a person with disability who's on the wheelchair. Mine is not a question, but it's something that maybe I think as COSA members we need to look into the issue of gender-based violence, which the president has announced as a national disaster. The gender-based violence doesn't affect people who are on their feet, but it does affect even us people who are with different disabilities. So we need to go out and maybe engage and find out from our members. We may find that a person is being abused but is not aware that what is happening to him or her is actually abuse. So we need to make them aware. I'm thinking since the government has announced that this national disaster, it might have funds for that so that we can go around and maybe try to engage with our members on the floor, because even people with disability are dying with this gender-based violence. They are being abused, they are being killed as well. So we need to go out and be. Others are on drugs, others are on alcohol. So we need to really to go out and try to talk sense in their minds. So that was I want to put in this. I was not having a question as such. So thank you for re-educating us about advocacy and lobbying. So we are learning, even if we have grown up, so we are still learning other things. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Pauline. Now I know it's you. And yeah, that is so true. Abuse is a relevant issue that is faced by a person with disabilities. It's a shame what's happening, and you're right. We want to expose this issue, so that we can follow the right channels and address it, and it must be reported as well to authorities. But you're right. It is an issue that needs to be addressed urgently. Thanks, Pauline. Anybody else have a question, perhaps, or comment to the panel? Okay. I have a question that I can perhaps share, and any one of the panel can answer before we wrap up. Okay, I see Raven. Do you have a question or comment?
Thank you very much, Chadley. Yes, I do. I do have a comment and a question also. Yes, man. The comment is, well done. Thank you very much for the opportunity that we had to engage on this day. And then my question is, I'm also thank you for Ari for that informative presentation. I have one question. It's not directed or aimed at Ari, but as you mentioned, as a member of the presidential working group, or shall I start there? Does QASA still have an active member in yourself, as we had in the past, that serves on that advisory capacity? Because I was very happy when you said roughly a year's time we will have a Disability Act. I just want to know what is the portal, or where can we access information regarding to the progress of the Disability Act?
Chadley, I'll answer that. Raven, thanks. Okay, so I serve on the Presidential Working Group from inception, but the term of the current members comes to an end in March next year, and they already had a call for new people to apply to serve on that. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a secretariat, so we are not well organized, although the individuals are putting a lot of work into the Disability Act. I would suggest the South African Disability Alliance Secretariat are the people who would know the progress of what's going on. I serve on that executive as well, but the Secretariat is quite efficient to keep people informed in the new year as progress on the Disability Act promulgation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that, Ari. Raven, I trust your question was answered. I have a question, and anybody of the panel perhaps can share. You know, Ari, I think you touched on advocacy, but just maybe to reiterate, how can people advocate or be activists in their communities as a member of CWASA and perhaps their family members?
Chadley, I'd happy to answer that. So there's a word which I learned when I started engaging with OUTA, and that is, or two words, moral substance and civil courage. So you need to have moral substance to say, I don't agree with that. And if I don't agree with it, if I don't put my hand up and be brave, have civil courage for your society, for your community, for your family, no matter how big or small the group is, no matter how big or small the table is that you're sitting at. If you don't put your hand up, then you are complicit in the thing that's going wrong. You really need to do the whistleblowing, or you need to point people out, or organizations or companies or whoever. You need to be a partisan for your constituency. It boils down to your conscience. You should have a greater conscience for what you're not doing than a conscience for what you are doing. So if you're not engaging with someone who's abusing a bay and just giving them the reasons why they're so important, then don't moan when the bay's full. Don't go to social media and post your nonsense there. Engage and see what it's like. If someone's rude to you, they will remember that far longer than you will remember. They are just abusing themselves, their own integrity. So you've just got to be an advocate for our rights. Once you put your hand up, you'll be representing a huge constituency. And so I think that's very brave. Thank you.
Thank you, Ari. That was so clear, standing up, raising your hand and explaining exactly to the person that's impeding your right in a way that they can that they understand as well, because we have to take the public as being ignorant and not aware about persons with disabilities in general. If there are no further questions, I've seen we've gone over the time, and as we conclude today's Disability Rights and Advocacy webinar, I want us to remember that